to our last arts chat of this year. We're going to finish with building a life as an artist. My name is Bea. I'm the associate producer at the Art Center, and I'm very honored to introduce you today our artist and our moderator. So our artist, Khalid Jauffer, artist, Carlos Páez, multidisciplinary theater artist, and Shilpa Ananth, Indian singer-songwriter. And today, this art chat will be moderated by Ciel Arbour-Boehme, who's a graduate of the MFA program, Art and Art Media. So thank you so much for coming, and please enjoy the talk.
So let's start off with a question about the topic of today's panel is about. So what does it mean to be an artist in the UAE? More specifically, what does your life look like being in the position you're operating in, specifically in your unique practices? So I'm going to start off
Okay. What is my life look like as an artist in the UAE?
Yeah, individual artist, working every day and observing your space around you.
I mean, traditionally, it's not like a traditional artist. I have a job. I work 9 to 5 for a museum, and it's only like after work and the weekend is when I produce work. I don't believe in having a studio to make a studio practice. Most of the time I make works either in my office, in my bedroom, or in someone else's house, car, things like that. My practice is about looking, and I think that's what all I do is that I look around city spaces, crevices, and I try to find subjects. That is what
Every day, people practice and working full-time as you all do, full-time. What does that look like in your everyday, in your practice?
Absolutely. For me, I mean, similarly, I work 9 to 5, but rolled over because I work at a school, so it's 7 to 3. Very fun to learn how to wake up early. But it's a very similar thing, right? Like I am currently in an arts residency, the Shilpa Emerging Artist Fellowship, which is very lovely because we have a studio space and a community to work together with. But the more time I spent in it and the more I learned about like making art in the real world, the more I learned that it will actually be very common for people not to have a studio space and for this not to be a thing that you dedicate a full amount of time to, especially when there isn't a robust ecosystem of arts that is being built around yet. And I think for me, a lot of what the focus is right now is in attempting to build that ecosystem of arts specifically for like theater and the performing arts, where there's still a lot of question marks and a lot of like tiptoeing into the future as we try to figure out what exactly it looks like to be a theater practitioner in this country. I mean, that includes things like the workshops that I co-run at 421, which right now have been halted because of what's been going on, but will hopefully be resuming at the start of the new year. But those have been a really, really lovely space to kind of meet people and also sort of get my practice out. I think for me, education is a very important part of my practice. So it's not just about making work, but how do I like share the knowledge and bring community together around that knowledge. It's a very important part of what I think of.
Yeah. And Khalid was also did the SEED Fellowship. You're currently in the SEED Fellowship. Yeah. And moving on to you, Shilpa, what about your everyday with working full-time and your various collaborations?
So I'm actually teaching at Berkeley, Abu Dhabi, and teaching music. So primarily I'm a vocalist, I'm a singer-songwriter, performing artist. And then basically I tend to use my time because my timings over there are sort of from 2 p.m. until 9 p.m. So I have this very good amount of time in the morning, so I tend to use that time to start my practice, to do my warm-ups, to do my meditation, yoga, all of the things. Basically for me the voice is like a spiritual instrument, music is a spiritual practice. So I try to give myself that time first, make sure that I am set up. Because even to be able to teach my students, to be able to give them knowledge or to be able to show them a skill, show them a technique, to be able to help them with their voice, I need to make sure that I take care of myself, my instrument first. So start off my day making sure that I take care of my own warm-ups, my own sort of practice routine. And then once I'm done with that, then I start kind of just working on the things I need to do for the day. So I have this practice of writing every weekend. I try to keep some time to songwrite and then also to record, because I realized that if I wait for inspiration or if I wait for time to happen, it's never going to be the case, and it's always this constant things to do list, stress, just so much going on in life. So I try to just keep aside time on the weekends when I know I have the day to myself. I don't owe my time to anyone else. So then that's when I work on writing, even if it's a very basic idea, write it down and then try to put something down and record it and keep like writing music so I don't lose that skill, that muscle as well.
So breaking more abstract, but also the past for each of you in your careers with where you're at, each of you being from unique practices, different genres of the arts field. What was a memorable moment in wherever you're at in your careers that you kind of identify as maybe a break, like an opportunity that was very significant, in the past or recent, whenever, if there's something that pops into your head?
For me, I mean, there's been like 3 big moments. I think if I'm going to talk about the UAE, I think especially when in 2020 when things locked down, everything was shut down, we were just in a state of like unknown and afraid of what's going to come, and all our gigs were getting cancelled and we were all sitting inside the house. At that point, I was definitely feeling a sense of, what next? How do I continue in my path, in my career, if I don't have work, and now is it everything online? So at this point, when I got booked and ended up booking the gig for Play at Expo 2020, which is in 2021. Confusing. But yeah, so it was in 2021, but it was a good way to also break into the music scene here, into the community here. I feel like that really helped, just to be able to be seen, to be heard, to be able to connect with other musicians as well. So that was a significant moment for me to be able to just tap into the artists and just the space here, which really helped me to just get myself going with further opportunities and gigs as well. So that was a significant, I would say, memory. But then I think before that, the biggest one would be during the pandemic, finding out that we got nominated for a Grammy. So, I had featured I sang and featured in another artist's album. That album got Grammy nominated, and so it was just like very weird time when everything looks like it's going downhill, but somehow personal life, some things were happening. I was living in New York, and then ended up my transition moving here during that time, got the teaching job, so blessings were happening, but this is what I remember of the time, and that is what also made me want to stay here, because I felt like something's going on and I need to find out what that is, and to be able to see if the UAE is a space where I could flourish and blossom as an artist as well.
I think for me, it's interesting. I think I'm definitely at a sort of early stage in my artistic career. And to think of a break, it feels like nothing has been like a massive break, but there are moments that have become that have been really key and that have led to opportunities further down the line, even if at the moment I didn't see those opportunities until way later on. One of those things was also related to Expo, which was a project that I got to do through Al for Expo. And it was a lot of lucky circumstances of I went to NYU Abu Dhabi, and NYU Abu Dhabi alumna was working at Expo, and then they also brought in somebody from NYU, and then they knew me and they knew my work from when I was a student. And that luckily kind of led me to doing one particular work, which I didn't know, but would later down the line lead to a few more opportunities with El. And later down the line, because COVID happened in between, and they were very busy all the time. But that was a very exciting thing that happened. I think the other one would be these workshops that I've been doing at 421, which was a different type of break because that one was, those came from, I went to a movement workshop by this artist who was doing a movement workshop for 421, and right after I was like, I need theater in my life, I needed to come back, and I literally sat with the people that I knew for 421 being like, let's make this happen. And then it just so happened that Mary Chase, who is a professional dancer working here right now through an Emirates School of Dance and just working in the city, was also interested in doing a very, very similar thing. And so we ended up co-running and co-founding this thing, which we call Performance Collab. And that has been, it's been really cool, but also very empowering because it showed me that, like, at the end of the day, yes, if you go and sit down to people and talk to people about your ideas, somewhere it will resonate and it will come to fruition. So.
Maybe not immediately, but
exactly, yeah.
it happens.
Like even then it takes time. Like institutions move slowly.
Very slowly, and it's like now.
Yeah, literally. Oh my god. So.
Beautiful, thank you. What about you, Khalid?
I don't know, similarly to you, I think like there's like multiple breaks that happen in the lifetime that you're just like, they all somehow add up and pile up. It's hard to like find definitive ones. But like the three I remember that kind of helped me push in certain directions was one, the Sheikh Salama Artist Fellowship. I think that as a program and like having these mentors come look at you, it's like the first time you're like actually like artists, we chose you, you're in this house and now you work, which I don't think, like you only get recognized as an artist a bit later with all the local institutions. But so it was nice to be so early on and they're like, no, we're gonna like foster you and take care of you. And as a resource, I was really thankful for that time because only after that program, all of a sudden like everyone's like, I heard you were in the program, and I'm like, I kind of existed always, but like, okay, like I'm glad, like this is a venue for everyone. But the sad part is like, then people think they cannot be an artist if they didn't do the program. There are things like that, but I was happy. Second, things like Circle, you know, like how they keep an eye for people, interesting people, and try to give like opportunities their way. Circle knew I kind of worked around with every gallery. I'm just a loiter at that point, looking for work. And they're like, do you want to go to Venice? And I'm like, yes. Like, you know, they're like, we'll give you a salary, we'll pay for your tickets, and you work in a museum for 2 months. I'm like, I don't have to work here. You're sending me? Again, it's bizarre. Like, you know, I didn't get to work in Circle, but they're like, we'll send you to Peggy Guggenheim in Venice, and you live there. Yes, I'll do that. I mean, like that too. Again, it's bizarre. You know, you grew up in Dubai, you don't have any context of art, modern art. Now there are so many avenues, but like back then, you're like, I've seen things as images, and now I'm forced to sit in the library of Peggy Guggenheim and like understand what these movements and what are these artists all doing here. And then you come back and you're like, now you have this bizarre experience. Like, yes, I got sent and I worked there. What kid grows up here and has that kind of a thing? Third would be not a positive COVID thing. It's like COVID realized how fucked I am as an artist. I'm so sorry. And like how much I needed a full-time job to like really, because there's no structure. There was sure a few grants going about, but like otherwise you're nothing, and everything else is falling structurally in terms of, you know, financial routine and stuff. So it's like, okay, I really needed something that's a backbone, because you can have a cute practice and people can like it. How are you going to live here? So after COVID, I'm like, I really need a full-time job. And now when people ask, it's like, do you want to quit your job and be an artist? I'm like, I think this is the best way I can be an artist. Like, this is the most efficient way I can be one. Sorry, Christopher. Yeah.
That's perfect. It kind of leads to our next question, which is about the arts ecosystem and how, you know, what you've observed during the time of being here and how the arts ecosystem has changed for each of your different timelines of being in the UAE. Anyone wants to lead?
For me, I grew up here, I was born here, brought up here, and then I moved to India, lived there, studied there, then moved to Boston, studied there at Berkeley College of Music in Boston, then lived in New York. And so I kind of saw the city grow as I was growing as well. And at that time, of course, there were no musical opportunities, which is one of the reasons why I left. Because I was like, okay, I want to learn, I want to be able to grow and develop as an artist. And I think think if I take myself seriously that way, I need to first move from here, and then if I have something of value, maybe I'll come back someday. But I need to get out of this place and see what's out there in the real out there. I don't know. Yeah, you know, out there, right? So, because this is a very beautiful bubble we're living in, so it's just it was good for me to get out and expose myself. And then I didn't come back here by choice because, as I said, I was actually here visiting my family, and then could not get back on the plane to Brooklyn because of lockdown. So that's how I ended up actually moving back here. It was not by choice, but it worked out very well in my favor, luckily. And so the thing is that at the time when I was, you know, I had moved back here, I was wondering, like, what is the music scene here? And I do see a lot of change. I do see a lot of growth, and I see that you know, as an artist, you can be making, as a musician, musical artist, I think you can be, you can have that as a full-time job here, but it just depends what you are doing. So for me, it was very important. I've already hustled in a different way. I lived in New York. I've hustled my way there, taken on any gig, every gig, just so that I could maintain my artist visa status over there. So I've really done that life, and so it was important for me over here that I don't repeat the same story just in a different city or different country. So for me, it was important that it was a good thing, just like Khalid said, to get that job, that full-time job, so that it allows me to be a good, for me, the artist that I wish to be. Because otherwise, yes, as an artist in this, as a musical artist in this country, you can be making money full-time, but it depends if you're ready to take on all the cover gigs, you're ready to perform pop hits and this kind of stuff, which, no shade, that's what you need to do to pay your bills, that's totally fine. But since I have already lived that life, been that person, it was important for me to get a different job, even something music related, but just not have that pressure to be able to be free, so that I could take the gigs I want to do, so that I can say no. And I think there's power in saying no, to be able to say no. That's a choice. That's a very beautiful choice. So I think what I've seen in terms of change here that I haven't seen in any other country is just the quality of living is much better, especially if you want to be an artist. Any other country, New York, it was a struggle. It was very much working 9 different jobs just to be able to pay rent, and this job pays the rent, that job pays the bills, this job pays, for your album. But here definitely there's a better system, and it is getting better, I think. And I think it would be, it's nice to be a part of something that you're, kind of the pioneer of a changing system, rather than just going into an existing system and you just have to make it whatever it is, you just go in with that and you've got to make it work. I think it's nice to see that change, to be a part of that change, and hopefully my purpose, I think, my life purpose is to be able to create music and to be able to empower people through my music. So I'm hoping that the change for me will be when we see more original music and original artists getting equal opportunity, and to be able to be heard and seen, and people supporting that as well, and not just celebrities coming from outside or international talent or even local talent, but they are forced to then be able to survive, to do cover gigs, but not really be able to develop their original music and original talent. So that will be when I see, the change that I want to see, but step by step.
Carlos, what about for you? What have you observed in changing kind of arts ecosystem in your time being here?
I started doing theater in Abu Dhabi when I was in high school, actually. And back then, I used to act with a locally based community theater company called Resuscitation Theater, and another one called Beyond the Veil, both of which have since disappeared and fizzled out into the air. Some community theater groups keep going strong, like the Abu Dhabi Choral Group, which does 2 shows every year. One of them here at NYUAD, they're perhaps the most successful community theater group in the city. Not perhaps, they are. But they do very specific type of work, and a similar thing to what Shilpa was saying, where the thing that I think in theater is not only the thing that's selling. It's not that they're all of them have jobs. This is community theater, and they all do this part-time for the love of it, and I don't believe any of them get paid. I think actually, in fact, you have to spend some money to actually get into the group. but they do it because they love musical theater, and musical theater is what they do. But that means that, you know, they don't do original work, they get the rights to musical theater plays from the US or the UK or whatever, and that's what they stage. And it's that, I think, what then starts to feel like it's missing is how do you talk to our situation here, which is something that the performing arts, I feel, has been struggling to do a lot. When I used to work with Resuscitation Theatre Beyond the Veil, we often staged plays by an Emirati playwright called Saleh Karama Al-Amali, whose plays are quite like intense and like controversial. Like one of the plays called One More Try is about a woman who has murdered her husband because he cheated on her with her best friend. And it's like the woman in prison talking to the lawyer, and then like the best friend comes to visit, and like a bunch of things happen. But like his plays are very, very interesting and intense, and it was a lot of, I got to see firsthand kind of like how you navigate stuff like, you know, censorship cuts, and how you navigate stuff like even like just self-censorship, and how you are careful to make sure that you it's not like not say something that would offend anybody, but I think it's about creating that safe space in the room that you're creating through your performance. How do you make sure that everybody in the room feels safe and available to access that conversation? And I think it's something that since these groups disappeared, there's been now conversations of how do we sort of get there, and there are plans that are starting to appear here and there. I know like my dear friend Reem Al-Minhali is currently directing a play that was written by an Emirati as well, and it's a satirical play. I probably can't say much about it, but also Ellen Ayad, who's sitting over there, recently wrote a play for children, which is about like being an alien in this world and the experience of existing as somebody who doesn't speak Arabic in an Arabic-speaking country. She's nodding, so I think I did. But these plays are slowly coming up, but then I think there's, for me, always those questions of how do you get the licensing to actually stage these plays? How do you get the venues? How do you get those fundings? Like getting the licensing is expensive, getting the venues is expensive, and it's something that I saw these groups that I was with struggle with a lot. And I think it's knowledge that was kind of lost when these groups fizzled out, and is now a struggle to understand how to actually do things legally. And people are slowly figuring it out, but it's not knowledge that's not yet readily available. And I think that's the biggest wall for performance here.
Yeah, knowledge sharing is essential. Khalid, what about you?
Yeah, I think, I mean, similar to Shilpa, but in my context, it's like, I think every kid that grows up here ends up thinking like we need to leave because there's nothing to see or there's no resources. Unfortunately, I couldn't leave, so I considered myself stuck for the longest time. But stuck in the sense, like, you know, when I'm like 16, I stumbled upon Al Circle Avenue, and that's where I saw the gallery. So that's like the first place that introduced me to contemporary art. And then I meet all these, like, at the time when I was, from between 16 to 18, then I meet these late 20-year-olds who just moved back from coming from whichever place they studied from. They're like interested in like producing art and producing programmings. So then a weird kind of relationship built up. So now, because also when you're a kid here, after high school, all your friends disappear. Everyone is shipped out and goes to another country. So then I'm like, okay, now I have these older 20-year-olds that I have to like compensate now. That I'm like, should they know so much and I don't know nothing? But yeah, so it was a weird kind of ecosystem because now, again, there's no 20-year-olds at all. Like everyone has disappeared. But you have these really talented folks that grew up here and they're like, okay, we want to contribute back. And it's from their resources that I kind of like fed myself, whether seeing their shows or following or going through their programs, and or just interning and volunteering with them. Like that's kind of how I grew up learning about art. And now it's weird because now I'm almost 30 and I'm like looking and I'm like, shit, there's actually so many young kids in the sense I would have never thought people would stay back, but now kids are growing up and they're like, there's actually reasons to stay back. There's actually so much opportunity. There's this program, there's this gallery, there's this institution, and they're churning it out like that never existed before, and then you're also like so thankful to watch it at the same time. Yeah.
So, this question is about if you have had significant mentors in your life, how have you maybe specific resources or guidance towards applying certain things, if that has existed in your life, a role model, mentor, and if not, but what that role has looked like if you had one, what kind of usefulness and what kind of relationships like that have helped you with what you're doing.
For me, it's been, I've not had any specific mentor. I wish I had. It would be amazing. It would be amazing for someone to be like, if you do this and this and this, you can get this, a pot of gold into the rainbow. But unfortunately, first of all, I think in the music industry, and music is a career, and I think art in general, it's just, there's no formula, there's no, 1 + 1 is equal to kind of situation. So everything is pretty much a gamble, it's a risk. When you're getting into this field, you're doing it because you are passionate, and you're doing it because you are internally driven to wake up the next morning and no matter what, you have to get through and do what you wish to do. So for me, it was more than a person or specific, like a mentor situation. More than that, it was actually friends, because you're just basically helping each other out. I think in Boston and New York, we had such a strong community, and I see some semblance of that here as well, but it's mostly to do with also sharing resources. And so what I felt in New York and in the US in general was there are many resources and everyone's willing to be like, hey, I'm applying to this festival, have you checked it out? Do you know about this one? The deadline is coming up soon, have you applied for this grant? So a lot of the time it was more of learning from each other and kind of also talking to each other about how much we're making, or talking to each other about experiences of this specific venue. Don't play there because they treat you like this, things like that. So we're really sharing knowledge, sharing resource of our own experience, and with that we're basically helping each other, mentoring in that sense, giving each other guidance. But no specific person. Who knows? Life is still so much more left to live, and who knows, maybe in the future there will be. But I think in some ways, like all of these people have come, I see everything as like a sign, as what it's meant to be, or this is specific. They come, they give you that specific understanding at a, in like a challenging time of your life. So in some ways, these people have all been there to support and guide, and then you give back as well. So you keep like kind of helping with the ecosystem just to keep that going forward. But who knows, maybe in the future.
Yeah, there's some more community learning,
Absolutely.
or sharing.
Absolutely.
Sure, rather than one significant, singular person. Carlos?
Yeah, I feel, like it's weird to think about mentors. I think I resonate a lot with what Shilpa said. Like it feels like friends, and we're kind of all learning in our separate ways and then sharing what we're learning as we kind of go about it. And I feel like this even for the people who are older than me in a lot of ways. Like, I know my boss at my current job is actually the director of the Abu Dhabi choral group, which I mentioned before. But in a lot of ways, she is more a friend than she is a mentor at this stage in my life. It's weird because, for me in particular, it's weird because what I've kind of defined as my practice is I want to figure out what this intersection between performance and game design is. And there's very few people who are doing that, especially in this part of the world. In places like New York or London, there's a lot of people who are trying to do that, and the varying degrees of success. From what I can garner, it's not like I'm there to see. But there isn't anybody that I can just go to like work with them and learn my craft. There isn't anybody that I can study under, and well, maybe there is, I don't know. But like it's really weird. Like there isn't in this country, there definitely isn't anybody that I can just go to and study under and be like, I'm going to learn my craft as I do this, as it would often be. And I think especially in the UAE, and I don't know if this is just the culture that has formed between the artists that are here, or it's just a product of like that we're all from such different places and from some different backgrounds and practices, but everybody really feels like they kind of strike out of their own identity. It's not like, you know, it's not like you're going into like the musical theater system in Broadway or the West End, but you're kind of your own thing and you're figuring out your own thing as you go. And I feel like because of that, it's so, like the idea of mentorship is such a weird one. Like there are people who I look up to as mentors and who I can be like, I'm really confused and I have no idea what's going on in life. Can we sit down and have a chat? And like they'll say something that doesn't necessarily point to anywhere, but that at least helps me feel validated in my struggles, which I think is always extremely valuable, to just have people who are more experienced that you can sit down and talk to. But there's nobody in that way that you can just kind of work under, and then eventually you'll like take over their company, or you will like, you know, do their practice but in a new way. I think those, I don't know if it's that those days are over, or if it's that that just isn't the way that things work in this country. But yeah, the question of mentorship is a weird one here because of all that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like I resonate a lot with what Shilpa was saying. Like it's over here, it just feels like, or what I tell everyone is that if you want to know something, you can just go to speak to anyone. Like there's no wall. Even sometimes being directors, even you're just like hi, which I think is really nice. You know, that's the good byproduct of being from a town that's infrastructure really big, but community is really small. So like everyone is accessible, and I think, I mean, there's no mentors, but there's always been these like key people. Like you meet someone, they give you 3 sentences, and that 3 sentences kind of help you out for the next few years. But I think also because, you know, it being so diverse here, this like direct mentorship, that lineage kind of doesn't exist, because everything's kind of shape-shifting all the time. So you have these different pockets of people coming in, and also since it's again such a come-and-go city, the type of mentorship you get is you get a chance to work with someone for 2 weeks, and you know they give you something that helps you out for 2 years. It's always kind of been like that. So there's no one key figure that stays for long, but I think it's great opportunities that you get to meet. I don't know, with my work per se, I used to work as an artist technician or art handler, and I would just work with the artists that came and visited. They teach me about their practice, 2 weeks they're gone, but I'm like, okay, like this is there to stay. So yeah, kind of with you also. Yeah, there's no direct mentorship.
So, how do you find, or do you find international opportunities and collaborations while working here? Shilpa, you've recorded and toured with a number of international groups, and so how, if you do, how do you kind of approach those relationships? How do you form those? Khalid, you've shown work around the world in England and India and Saudi, and so, and how do those look, and how would they happen?
So for me, I would say it's not, nothing has been a very direct path. Everything is kind of like they were saying as well. You do something at one time, and then maybe 2 years later, you know, and especially if you're an impatient person, it's like the art of patience is the artist industry. Really, like what you're being taught is just to wait. You know, just be patient, because it could take 2 years, it could take 10 years, and then you suddenly start. You need to just be ready all the time. Just be ready. So I can't say, because since I've moved around a lot, so every country that I've moved to, every city that I've lived in, having those connections with artists over there, that has definitely helped, and that's kept pathways open for me, because even though I'm living here now, I'm still connected to and getting work and do projects with counterparts in the US. And so my album, I just put out a new album recently, and the entire thing was conceptualized during pandemic, so all of us were locked down, working from different parts of the world, and we were able to, like, my producer was out in LA, one of my instrumentalists was out in India, so everything was just recorded. One of the vocalists was in Serbia, so everything was just done remotely, and that's possible now. So I think the connection, the kind of, you know, just the time, the experience, and just being able to have these relationships from being in different parts of the world and stuff, that's definitely opened up more doors for me. I'm not sure how it would have been, I can never say how it would have been if I had just continued to live here, would it have, but at the same time I do see from my past, like I've been living here for the past 3 years, and what I do see is we do get many opportunities to open for these international artists that come. So, I think one step for me was to connect with like a booking agency. There are a lot of events agencies and these production houses. So, when you connect with one, you start going to a bunch of gigs, you start talking to, again, like what Khalid said, it's very much open in terms of to be able to go and speak with people, to be able to go and have that direct kind of connection and to be like, hey, like I'm an artist, check out my work, and it doesn't feel like it's just gone into outer space or something like how I used to feel sometimes in the States, where I'm chasing all these people, but it felt like nothing was really happening, until it happened. But here I feel like you're connecting directly with people, and eventually, as they see you also kind of doing what you're doing and how serious you are, and the fact if you're a professional and if you're, you come to your shows and everything is like you're set in that sense, then I do see you getting more and more opportunities. And so I think definitely connecting as a musician, I would say connecting with more booking agencies and events companies, because they're the ones that are handling all these big events. So if you're on their mind, if they're booking you for smaller gigs, and then eventually when a big artist comes, like I ended up opening for Jacob Collier when he came to Abu Dhabi. Yeah, he's incredible. So I mean, I don't like that. Just again, sometimes it feels like a miracle, and sometimes it feels like right place, right time, which is most things in life. But I do think that there are opportunities in the UAE which would not happen anywhere else in the world. It just feels like, what? Like I'm opening for this incredible artist who is one of my heroes and musical heroes. And I think that comes, they see you growing here, they see you working for it, then you get those opportunities. Or else, okay, you're a professional, you're experienced, whether you came here from somewhere else, whatever it is, I think you tend to, you can get those kind of opportunities that then also came out of, like, it feels like it came out of nowhere, but probably a seed planted 2 years ago. So yes, I think that is what I've experienced here specifically, and then just recently over the summer went on an India tour and everything. But again, that a lot of it is coming from me, and it's not something like someone else is handing me. Like, it's not like someone has invited me to. So it's a lot of it is personal investment, in the hopes that eventually I will be at a place where everything is taken care of, and I can just show up as an artist and not like the businesswoman, the band leader, the this, the that, like taking care of everything. So that would be the dream. But for now and for the past 10 years of my career, it's very much me putting everything in it, and then these kind of beautiful connections and relationships forming, which have then led to opportunities internationally and to be able to be seen and heard in all these different spaces, for sure.
Carlos, what about you? Have you been able to have collaborators elsewhere beyond this country?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing, my big thought right now is like, I'm not good at putting myself out there, which is definitely true of the online space for me. I'm still figuring out what it means for me to be present on social media, what it means for me to reach out to people and like be like, this is my practice, can I do something? And it's a slow process, no need to rush it. Yeah, but it's been nice to kind of have friends who exist in other parts of the world and whom I can, they have open calls and I can be like, I want to be in your thing. Most recently, I had a digital art piece that was shown in an online gallery that's based in Berlin, but the only reason why I could do that was because my friend Harshini, who was also an NYUAD alum, was one of they were literally the person who was curating that exhibit, right? So then, it's about keeping those relationships that have been forming. I feel like this one guy on YouTube said something about networking that has stuck with me. So I'm now going to repeat the thing that the guy from Healthy Gamer GG said, which is that when you go and network with people, like his intention is like I'm there to like help out the people around me, and I think that to me has made a lot of sense. And when I approach it with like, I'm not trying to get my work out there. I'm not trying to like book me, book my show or whatever, but rather let me listen to you and let me care about you, and like I'll contribute the things from my end that make sense. And one of those sort of like germinating collaborations happened with this expo project that I got to do. We found a programmer, a creative coder, who's based in the Netherlands, and she's been back. She was working on some of the exhibits that are now at COP in Expo City. And one time when she came, we met up, and there were conversations about a collaboration possibly happening sometime, like very informal, who knows what it's going to be or what it's going to look like, but also like getting to hear about her own personal projects and things and how they overlap with my own interests, and how that might sometime evolve in the future into something. And I think just being present with people, and eventually the people that like you enough will come work with you. And I mean, I do think I speak very specifically from that theater background, where theater is the collaborative art. Like even if you're doing a monologue, you're never working alone. So collaboration happens because it needs to happen, but collaboration also happens ideally in person. It's very hard to do it online and internationally without the budget and the resources to fly people in. And figuring out collaboration in this country is taking its time, but we're slowly building the networks through these workshops of 4-to-1 and just like meeting people, going to community dinners or talking to people. But being present with people and trusting that people will remember you if they really care about you, and that's ultimately the people you want to work with, because there are also bad collaborations in life, and I would rather stick to the good collaborations.
And after your response, we'll dive into some questions for a couple minutes.
I know you mentioned like I did a few shows internationally, but it makes it sound a lot grander than what it is.
Grand.
It's not. But like the weird part of growing up here is like you also to call spade for spade. Like what art was shown here was international people. Like there's no room for anyone who was producing art here to show. So like that was the premise. And what I'm looking at is import, and I'm never going to be import. And the first show I ever had was an open call for Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which when I tell someone in the UK, they're like, oh, that's such a grand place. And I'm like, I have no idea what it looks like. Like I know I sent my work, they put it on a wall. I know what one corner looks like, but I don't know what the exhibition is. And yeah, I think the thing is about like international opportunity is over here, it's still a weird space where you're still trying to, not gonna say fight, but like you're still trying to make a place over here. You're still trying to, have shows. It's the thing, it's the place that you consume yourself the most, but you also want to be represented. I think that is what's taking the longest time. But like now, everyone's banging it out. But like growing up, rarely, like when I was shown in Warehouse, like my mind was blown. Like a curator saw my work, thought about me, and wants to put me in a show. The thing is, also a curator is someone who lives in Sharjah and New York. So he's thinking simultaneously of pairings between these two, but I don't think that would have existed if someone like him didn't exist. But now, only now we're scratching the surface of like a different world where like last week someone found me on Instagram and turns out she works for a gallery that I followed ages ago internationally, and she's like, oh, now we're interested in you guys, like you make really cool work, which is weird. It's slightly uncomfortable because for the longest time it's hard for you to get attention of someone who is here, and now we're interesting. The international market wants to also take part. I don't know. Yeah, it's a tricky thing.
Yeah, sporadic.
Yeah, like I still feel like despite having a few shows here, I didn't do enough over here. And it's like, also we don't grow up thinking the outside world is our resource. Because over here there's not enough resources. So how would you even think that the outside world has a resource? And then we, for example, let's say someone moves into this country. They're from XYZ, but they're practicing artists. But they're thinking about grants, programs, which place to apply to, which open call. But you have no idea because you, as your system, you never grew up thinking there are opportunities to foster this. But it's all accessible for them. So yeah, it's a bit of a learning curve to also think like, oh no, there are things outside that you can access. It's not this only for them Western world kind of a thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Maybe we'll open up the floor if anyone has any questions. Any pressing concerns? If not, I do have some more questions, or you guys could discuss anything else about what it's like to be a practicing artist in the UAE. But if anyone does have a question, just raise your hand. Yeah. So, speaking about resources, could you, if there's any that you have found here or that are kind of accessible while being here, there's SEEF, of course, you've both been involved with. Are there any resources that you might suggest having artists or ones that are really meaningful and substantial for help in your life?
I can, that's alright.
Go ahead.
No.
You sure?
You broke the silence.
I don't know, I mean, I was recently talking to a friend about, so I found out about the Gaza monologues like the day before you're supposed to perform them, and so there was no way that it was going to happen. But I was talking to a friend about the possibility of making it work, and the thing that she said was that why don't you try to do it with an institution, because then even though Gaza right now is a quite politically tense subject, if the institution approves it, then you're protected by the institution. And I think it's not just about institutions also have resources, and they have spaces, and they have audiences that they reach out to, and they have marketing teams. And I think, you know, like I keep talking about my performance workshops at 421, but then there's also, I know at Berkeley there's a dance group that meets 3 times a week for like 4 hours each time they meet. Crazy, I really want to go and check them out. But like they have the space because Berkeley's there, and because Berkeley gives them a space, and because performing outdoors, A, the heat, but B, also performing in public here is not allowed unless you have all the proper licensing. So, you know, I had an experience where I was once doing a rehearsal for a play that was going to be short and sweet, and I was living in a small apartment at that time, and so we went outside in Ream Island to rehearse. And the security guard walked over and asked me a bunch of questions, and then we're like, okay, we're just gonna keep rehearsing in the living room of the tiny apartment. But institutions sort of guard you from that, and things are okay when you're inside the institutions. They also are fairly approachable, and I feel like institutions want to be approached, and they sometimes maybe feel like they don't get approached enough. I don't know. I'm not an institution, so I wouldn't know. But they're there and they're available, and I think that's the biggest resource, even more so than, you know, because there are open calls and there are residencies, and those are all things to apply to, but all these tend to be competitive, and you know, it's a specific format. Like even like doing a residency right now, like doing SEEF. SEEF is wonderful, and one of the reasons it's wonderful is because you're not expected to produce finished, complete work by the end of it. Right, it's a very educational residency, and that is great. But then if you're ever in a residency that does expect that, then you're making work in a way that's like rigid and specific to that. And deadlines are important, but also then when you have a life and when you work a 9 to 5, rushing to meet those deadlines can end up being very unhealthy. So then, like I think, taking that first step to actually talking to the institutions is the way to go. I'm still testing out the hypothesis myself, but it seems to work somewhat so far. So.
They've got a bunch of people working in them, so.
I mean, that's the thing, people forget, like, it's people, they're, like, institution, but there are people genuinely working in there, you know, and they're approachable.
And they care.
And they care, yeah, exactly. Like, that's the thing, there's no, like, SO resources, it's just like, if you know a human being is doing something, it doesn't hurt to ask. It really doesn't hurt to ask. I can ask silly things. Like, I asked Circle to give me access to their studio space. Well, not studio space, they have a living room in one of the warehouses. And I'm like, okay, your studios are booked, I don't want them, but I need a big table to work on. And I had access from 6 p.m. onwards till whatever late at night. I would just be working there like it's a Starbucks. But you know, they all went home, but so I would come back from work and I'm like, okay, I have this like giant living room space that I can just sit and work out of. But again, you can make small requests. Like, I think people always have this idea that you have to ask something grand, you know, or milk it out, but like, you could ask a small thing. It's like, can I have a table to sit at some point?
Actually, this is not something that I saw here growing up. It's something more I'm seeing in the US and stuff, and even over here in terms of like applying for grants and everything. That's just something I learned about when I was in the US. And when I came back here, I was trying to find more sort of resources like this to be able to apply for more funding and stuff. But what I could see was a lot of them tend to, especially if it's music related, a lot of them tend to be giving importance, I think, and I guess it makes sense also to a certain extent, but to, you know, like there's a sort of like distinction that this is only for Marathis or something like this. So there were a lot of times when I don't even have a space to apply because obviously I don't identify as Arab, even though I grew up in this country and was born here, but from India. So it just, there's been those kind of roadblocks, so I wish there were more resources, more situations where, you know, everyone can apply and be able to have that equal opportunity for that grant or funding or whatever it is. Something that, however, Berkeley is doing at the moment is called the Berkeley Abu Dhabi Fellowship Fund. So through that, if you can apply, and there's some criteria, of course. You need to have taken a course at Berkeley, at least one program for one semester, and you need to be from specific countries that they've listed. But if you are, and thankfully South Asia is a part of that list, so if you are, then you are eligible to apply for funding to be able to go and study at Berkeley Boston or Berkeley Valencia or Berkeley New York for a master's program or an online program or a degree. So they want, I can see that there is interest and there is this sort of like support to send people from here, and not just Arabs but also people from several different nationalities to go and study music and get the skills and then come back here and be able to give back to the country. So that's specifically coming through the fellowship fund at Berkeley. So I would suggest all musicians check that out. That's a good one to see if you can qualify, and if you are, then great, apply and see what happens.
I mean, the weird thing about like grants and stuff is like abroad, it's all like a weird tax evasion scheme, you know, like realistically speaking, like, it's like, that makes sense why they want to put this much money for just art, like, you know, over here, like, I was annoyed at those kind of aspects of growing up here, and you're like, this makes no sense, but then I think it's like, then there's also this like idea of like, I deserve kind of that comes up here, or who deserves, and I think once you also realize it's like once you realize outside what the truth is of how those money is kind of accumulated and why it's being dispersed, then you kind of, I don't know, you kind of reevaluate of like, okay, like what is actually in my reach, and forget this idea of like deserving. I don't know, or you figure out ways that you're like, okay, I'll get a full-time job and that becomes my grant.
Exactly, which is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Like I don't want anyone to dictate what art I create at a specific time.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was great to help me get started, but now it's good to have this job, like you said, gives me the freedom to say no to gigs, but also to be able to fund my own work and do it the way I want to do it.
It is unfortunate, but I think it's a nicer sense of independence. Because then because there's also a violence with like these kind of programs that have particular requirements, is that now you start catering your own body, your own work to that thing, because you know those are the only avenues they're distributing money for. So it's like better, it kind of, I think we're all better off like with our own money, making our own decisions.
Absolutely.
But it'd be nice to get more sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the future.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much
you.
for taking the time to enlighten those of us here and those of us watching. So thank you so much.